Okay, for our next session, our speaker is Dan Gesshel. He is the founder and principal for Elevate Digital Strategy, and his session is Data is not a byproduct, it's the product, applying data as a product thinking in M&E. Dan Gesshel.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you that are looking for a technical conversation, this is going to be probably the most non-technical conversation of this entire conference. So just brace yourself. I know you've been going through a lot of these, but this one is definitely not that. Let me start out with a quick question. How many of you think of yourselves as data people? And people? Yeah? All right. How many of you actually are running SQL queries and building data models on a daily basis? All right. Fewer hands, slightly fewer hands. So here's the trap. Whether you think about it or not, everybody's in the data game, right? But today, most of you don't own your data the way you own products. That's why it feels kind of slow, brittle, or even frustrating for a lot of people. This talk is about flipping the lens. Data isn't a byproduct, it's the product. And once we treat it that way, we unlock leverage across media and entertainment. All right, so let's make this real. On the screen are 4 groups. See if one sounds close or familiar to you. You have the business user. You request a report, wait 3 weeks, the numbers don't quite match up to last month, the explanation makes no sense, so you build the deck and hope you don't get skewered in the presentation. Maybe you're the engineer. You get a vague request, show engagement by campaign, by platform, year to date, month over month. And you rebuild the joins and pray the schema hasn't changed and you probably burn another week. Maybe you're the executive. You spent millions on cloud platforms and consultants, but still wait weeks for a simple answer. And when you ask who owns this, no one does. Maybe you're the external customer. Your partners get CSVs, outdated APIs, or data dumps. These are customers of your data, but they're running on duct tape and PDFs. Different roles, same bottlenecks. And here's the kicker. This isn't a tooling problem. This isn't a data lake problem. This is a product thinking problem. Here's what it looks like in most media organizations today. Each team is producing valuable data, but they're doing it in isolation. What you're left with is kind of a mishmash of interfaces and connections that are not scalable, reusable, or really owned by anybody. Everything from a Slack request to manual exports to my personal favorite, Ask Derek. The AI initiatives don't solve this either, right? You're feeding it scattered, stale, and often siloed data. So on the right, this is where we're headed. Modular, reusable data products owned by the domains, connected by a platform. So what I'm basically saying is that there's a better way. So we followed the playbook. We were told to centralize everything, build a single source of truth, dashboards for all, real-time pipeline, build once, use everywhere, and on paper, it looked great. But what did we actually get? Different versions of the truth, endless asks for one-off pulls, dashboards no one trusts, weeks of waiting for reports, data copied and recopied across tools. We didn't build leverage, we just shifted the bottlenecks. That's why treating data like a product is different. It forces us to move from infrastructure for its own sake to solving real jobs for real users. I just want to make sure I clarify this. When I say treat data like a product, I just don't mean like tidy data sets or cleaner dashboards. It's a mindset shift in media and entertainment. Normally, product is thought about as like content or film or a series or a brand. In tech, product is something you design, own, and evolve to solve a user's problem over time. So I'm talking about applying that mindset to data. It's not just an asset to collect. It's not just infrastructure to maintain. It's a solution with a purpose, a user, a life cycle. The point isn't pipeline or platforms. It's building experiences people can trust and reuse. Data that behaves like a product, not a byproduct. So here's a metaphor I like to use. For years, we've treated data like a single refinery. One massive line of cars, everyone waiting for their custom blend of fuel, right? The data scientist wants something raw. The exec wants premium fuel. The analyst needs something else entirely different, maybe ethanol. And they all wait because there's only one pump, the data engineer. That model doesn't scale. Data as a product flips this model. It's a self-serve station. Each pump delivers curated, documented, and trusted products designed for the user's engine. The complexity behind the scenes doesn't disappear. But to the user, it's simple, it's reliable, and it's accessible. This is the difference between queuing endlessly for custom requests versus empowering every team with what they need and when they need it. Data as a product isn't necessarily brand new. The idea's been around for a few years. But what's changed are the stakes. Before 2019, most organizations centralized everything or tried to in one big warehouse or lake. It felt modern, but it was still just a pipeline-centric model. Then came data mesh, and that kind of shifted the ownership back to the domains, introducing product thinking. It was interesting, but a little bit early. Fast forward to Gen AI in 2022 and beyond. Speed, trust, and reusability, those became critical overnight. And suddenly the old model couldn't keep up. That's why this isn't an evolution of data architecture. It's a business necessity. So I say if you're still operating like it's 2015, you will not be able to compete in 2025. So let's make this a little bit more concrete. What actually makes something a data product? It's not a dashboard. It's not a table in your warehouse. It's not an ETL pipeline or a raw data dump. A data product is designed and supported to solve a recurring problem for a specific user or domain. It has a clear purpose and use case, an interface you can rely on, an API or a feed, not a CSV emailed out on Friday. Documentation, SLAs, lifecycle management, feedback loops, so it improves over time. If a user can find it, trust it, and use it repeatedly, it's a product. If it takes Slack threads, Jira ticket, and weeks of waiting, that's not a product, that's a bottleneck. And here's the key. When you apply product thinking, the complexity stays under the hood. To the user, it's clean, usable, and scalable. A well-formed data product isn't defined by what's inside it, regardless of what people may think, but how it behaves. It has a clear purpose and an owner. It's discoverable. It's documented. It's reliable. And evolves with usage, with metrics and feedback and iteration. That's what separates a product from just another data set. So on the left, these are a bunch of nice rectangles I put up there. On the left, you're going to see where most orgs still live. Looking to centralize ownership, monolithic architecture, top-down governance. It's slow and it's brittle. And on the right, you're going to see things like domain ownership, distributed but interoperable architecture, governance that's automated and federated. It's fast and scalable and integrated. This is the shift from pipelines to platforms. And in media and entertainment, where no team has the full picture, unless domains can produce and consume in sync, you'll always be stitching reports together. That's never going to change. Interestingly, software made this leap already, right? In software, we went from monoliths to microservices to platforms, and we did this years ago. That gave us modularity, ownership, and scale. Data is still stuck in the monolith stage, right? One warehouse, one team, fragile pipelines. Data mesh and product thinking are kind of the microservices moment for data. So software kind of evolved. Data hasn't yet. And until it does, you won't be able to deliver at the speed and trust that the business is going to expect. All right, this is my most technical slide of the deck, so brace yourselves. So let's zoom in on the architecture a little bit. A data mesh platform works across 3 planes. So on the bottom, you have an infrastructure plane. This is kind of like the plumbing, right? That's where your storage, your compute, your orchestration, your identity, it's pre-provided so that every team doesn't rebuild the basics. Then you have that middle layer, that's the data product plane. That's kind of like your workshop, right? That's where domains build and run products, define logic. That's where they build their pipelines and deployments. And then you have the very top layer, which is the mesh experience plane. That's kind of like the control tower, right? That's where people have discoverability. There's monitoring, there's lineage, there's policy enforcement. That's where users find and trust the products. Now on the right, we'll take a closer look at a single data product. That's the unit of value. It takes inputs from other products or sources. It applies its own business logic and transformation, including code. It exposes outputs via APIs or feeds to other teams and partners. What makes this work at scale is that every product is self-documenting, observable, and governed by the platform by design, not as an afterthought. So the result, domains move fast, but move within guardrails that keep everything interoperable, secure, and compliant. Let's ground this in media and entertainment for a second. So there's a lot of different use cases up there. I just put in a handful. We can talk about a couple. So like distribution partner feed, you could do something where, YouTube, Roku, Amazon, every partner has its own metadata rules. Today, that means manual fixes, delays, and QC rejections. A productized feed standardizes once auto formats per partner and can cut rejections by 30 to 50%. So faster onboarding, real money saved. Maybe you do something like a rights tracker API, right? Instead of waiting on an analyst to validate rights by territory, time, and platform, you have distribution, ops, and legal. They can all see the explanations in real time. It's the same data set, but now it's live and reusable. So basically, even though there's a lot of different use cases here, from localization to machine learning training, the key takeaway is that this isn't theory, right? These are all repeatable products that lower costs, boost productivity, and even generate new revenue. Most organizations move through 3 stages. There's the raw and fragmented, which is data lives in various parts of the organization in silos. They have pipelines, they're brittle, definitions don't match, and trust is very low. Everything requires manual prep from the same people. A lot of times companies try to move to stage 2, and that's where it's curated and centralized. Data looks cleaner. It's in a warehouse or a lake. There's some governance, but it's still pipeline centric. And then you want to try to move to the last stage, or stage 3. That's what we're talking about. That's federated and productized. Domains own their data products. APIs make them discoverable, interoperable, and reusable. Governance and observability are baked into the actual process. They're not bolted on. Here's the key. This shift isn't just about cleaning data and making it better. It's about changing ownership, governance, and discoverability so every product fits into one coherent ecosystem. So the benefits are clear. What's stopping us? It's not just technology. The roadblocks are everywhere. So from an organizational perspective, oftentimes there's no clear owner. From a technology perspective, years of patchwork tools that don't necessarily work together. Data quality, definitions don't match. Documentation's thin, and trust is not existent. Or maybe there's culture, right? Dashboards are seen as the finish line, but a dashboard isn't a product. A quick story. I once asked a team to show me their data products, and they pulled up this beautiful dashboard. I mean, it was a work of art. But every week, someone manually pulled, cleaned, and uploaded the data to it. And if that analyst was out on PTO, the whole thing broke. And that's not a product. That's just a one-off report with some really good UX on it. These barriers don't just slow people down. They quietly kill initiatives before they ever scale. So what are some of the solutions here? So for an organization, you have ownership. You assign a data product owner per domain. For technology, you have a unified platform. You stand up a shared mesh platform for your data products. For data quality, you have quality by default as opposed to adding it in. So mismatched definitions, stale data, you automate all that validation. And then for culture, you have product thinking. And product thinking is the actual change, right? It takes people away from thinking of data strictly as an IT initiative and puts it into the queue of actually product thinking. So even if you solve these tech and org issues, there's still two killers that can still derail you. At least this is what I've seen. Execution is one of them. This isn't project management, right? A Gantt chart keeps things on task. Execution means product leadership, carrying a vision from strategy through delivery, adoption, and iteration. Without that, you end up with outputs, not outcomes. The other one is go-to-market. Even with perfect execution, products fail. If no one uses them, that's a huge problem. If, you're treating internal teams not like your customers, that's going to become a challenge. I've seen brilliant AI recommendation systems shut down within months because the tech was fine, but no one was using it. Adoption just lagged. Execution and adoption are never accidents. They're the result of deliberate product leadership, and without it, these killers tend to win. I'll keep this one crisp. There's about 6 levers that go with execution and go-to-market. Domain-aligned ownership. The team closest to the system owns the product, and you have a dedicated product owner for it. There's governance by design, which I mentioned earlier, and there's lifecycle management. There's no more launch and forget. That's just not how that works. And then for the go-to-market perspective, you have discoverability. People can actually find these products. They're not guessing at where they are. There's adoption enablement, right? Internal marketing, onboarding, training, engagement and measurement. You track usage, you capture feedback, you improve things over time. Think of it like this. Execution builds the product and go-to-market makes it stick. And without these kind of levers, you risk great products kind of just dying on the vine. So why now? What's the actual business leverage here? Well, you get faster time to insight, and everybody loves faster time to insights. You lower your data ops costs. You have the opportunity for new monetization models. You have AI ML readiness, and who doesn't want to be ready for AI and ML? And you have internal productivity, which can boost your efficiency as much as 25 or 30% internally. These aren't my numbers. Gartner, McKinsey, and industry benchmarks back this up. The bottom line, this isn't an IT project upgrade. It's a business growth engine, and in media especially, no one's waiting for folks to catch up. In the old IT-driven world, success was measured by systems, health, pipeline uptime, terabytes of data, tickets closed, and those are all great for stability purposes, but they don't tell you the story of whether data is actually delivering any value. In the data product world, we kind of changed that lens. So we have a value realization rate. How many products are being used and how are they driving measurable outcomes? We have adoption and retention. Are teams actually using these? Trust scores and AI readiness. Because if people don't trust the product, they're not going to use it. And if it's not ready, your AI projects are all going to stall. So the conversation shifts from outputs to outcomes. That's when executives start treating data as a business platform and not another IT project. Here's the mindset shift. On the project side, the focus is delivery, right? Projects end, teams disband, ownership disappears. That works for construction of things, but with data, value has a shelf life. If no one owns it, it's going to fade really fast. On the product side, focus is evolution, right? Products have an owner, a roadmap, and defined outcomes. They adapt with user needs, and their value compounds over time. Think about every app you rely on or the streaming platforms in the industry, right? None of them are projects. They're all products. The same should be true for data. Treat it as a project and it fades. Treat it as a product and it's going to continue to grow. Adoption isn't a cliff. It's a ramp. Because this is when people tend to freak out that, oh my God, this is going to be a whole other platform I'm going to have to put in. I put this into 3 phases. The first phase is kind of like a pilot, right? You pick one valuable data project, but low risk. You ship it as an MVP into production. You define your success metrics. You get feedback and you show it works, almost like a proof of concept. Then you expand that. You add 2 or 3 more products with clear ROI. You introduce just enough standards. This is where your development of your data mesh platform begins to kick in. You reuse what you built. And then lastly, you begin to scale it, right? You make product thinking the default. You enable self-serve with catalogs, observability, and SLAs. Governance becomes automated guardrails. There's no more gatekeeping. The point is you don't need to boil the ocean, right? You just build trust and proof step by step. Remember that the adoption is a curve and not a stopwatch. I get this question a lot too. So who owns what in this model? So I came up with this little diagram here. So the top layer is the business, which is different. They own the products and the outcome, the SLAs and roadmaps. They are responsible. This isn't an IT project. Domain leaders decide what gets built and why, and they're accountable for the results. The middle layer is the tech and data. They enable, not gatekeep. They provide the self-serve platform, the contracts, the guardrails, so domains can move safely and autonomously. And then the bottom layer is the platform. It's a business asset. It's managed like a product. It's funded with a funded roadmap. It's reusable services. It has catalogs, cost transparency. And then surrounding everything is going to be governance, policy, privacy, risk. They're automated wherever possible to speed up trust so that everything goes together. Directionally, business drives the what and why. Platform scales the how. Governance protects the trust. That's the shift. Business-led, platform-enabled, governance-proven. Here's how value compounds without the Big Bang program. So you ship a real business product into production. You prove trust with SLAs and outcome metrics. Whatever works, you standardize and reuse. And then your time to value shrinks with each new product that you add. It becomes faster and safer to add those products. So that's the value flywheel. You ship, you measure, you reuse, gets faster, and then you can scale. The more it spins, the stronger this is going to get. All right, I know everybody's hungry for lunch, so let's recap this journey real quick in 5 beats. So when we started, we talked about most orgs live in a fragmented world that they're trying to centralize. There's handoffs, there's silos, and the pipeline myth of a single source of truth. Lots of noise, low leverage, and asking Derek for lots of questions. Then we talked about reframing it, right? Data isn't a byproduct, it's a product. That means a business operating model, not an IT structure. Define, we make products concrete, right, through ownership. We have contracts, we have SLAs. Trust is measured, not assumed. And there's real UX behind it. Then we talked about shifting things, right, to the domains to build on a self-serve platform, reuse patterns, measure outcomes, not outputs. And then we talked about scaling it. That's the flywheel, right? We ship that value. We standardize what it looks like, and the platform multiplies that leverage. And that's the path, right? You start it, you reframe it, we define it, you shift, and then you begin to scale. And the thread running through this all, business owns the why and what, the platform scales the how, governance protects the trust. So to close, if you take away one idea, it's this. Data isn't a byproduct. It's the product. Treat it that way and you turn scattered data sets into trusted reusable products that deliver leverage across your business, faster insights, lower cost, new revenue, and AI that actually works. You start small, you build momentum, and you let the flywheel scale what works. I want to thank everybody for their time today, especially right before lunch. I appreciate the chance to be here with all of you. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to our moderator, Juan Reyes, for some final thoughts.
Thank you, Dan. Does anybody have any questions? Got a question over here in the back.
This is about stale data, which I heard you briefly mention, but is a huge impact when you have data with other dependency data. This seems to address this pretty head on in the daily change of business, but do you have any specific thoughts on stale data or prevention of? That was not loud enough.
Yeah, I just couldn't hear you where.
Sorry about that. Do you have specific thoughts on stale data and the prevention of stale data? I see this pipeline would address that very well.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge that you have with some of the way that the data is set up right now does need to actually change moving forward, right? So data mesh platforms and data products work off of a bitemporal aspect when it comes to time, as an example, right? So they actually take in the data, regardless of whether the data, by the way, is right or wrong. There's the processing of the data when the data actually came in and was processed. And then there's the actual timestamp of the actual data value. So what happens is that the data constantly is almost kind of in a fresh state, right? It's constantly being updated. And that way, if you talk to any analyst, an analyst will tell you that aspect of stale data and the time aspect of data are two key areas, right? And the data mesh and the data product idea is that both processing and real times are in there so that the analyst can be able to produce that data and demonstrate this is the information I had when I was processing it, and this is the information I had that is whatever, when the actual operating model stamped that data. So it kind of resolves the aspect of the staleness. I hope that helped.
I have another question here. In a data mesh architecture, does every node need to know about each endpoint? Does that pose a scalability problem?
Does every node need to know about each endpoint? Can you elaborate, whoever asked that question? I mean, it's not a bad question. I just need to know a little bit more. Yeah.
In the mesh architecture, right now, the fact that every API, every one of the node needs to talk to every other node's APIs, you showed 3 nodes, nice enough, but you go 80, 90, 100. Now suddenly do each one of them need to talk to each other API endpoint?
No, they don't necessarily need to talk to each other. The data mesh from that top layer makes them discoverable on that platform. So the data products themselves don't necessarily have to talk to one another, but they do have to be discoverable on that platform. And what that top level does is there's certain standards that you want. So as an example, you're going to want a schema standard for all those data products, but deciding what that schema looks like, that's up to the individual domain, right? So it gives that kind of level of autonomy where they can pick certain things within the platform so that the platform keeps it standardized, which is, by the way, a huge problem across media entertainment. When you go from group to group to group, all those standards are different. That keeps those standards in check, and that also makes them searchable. But the individual products don't necessarily have to talk to one another because they're actually just sitting on the actual platform itself. So if somebody wants it, one of the premises behind it is that you need to be able to have these discoverable. There is an actual API. Besides the output API on the actual data product, there's an API that has all of the documentation, the schema. It has sample data on it. It has everything that you need to make it discoverable. And the premise is that you do not have to be a data engineer to also discover this as well. The idea is that it's set up so that that complexity has been abstracted from you, and that, you know, if you're a Python engineer, if you know Java, or you're a business analyst, you can go in and access this and search it and find. But one of the other aspects, kind of like what we were talking about, is that you have to be able to have all of these other data products on there be searchable across, because what they found is being able to discover a lot of these other areas, particularly, by the way, even if you wanted to release this data to external parties, it's incredible what other people think of that other people aren't thinking of. And that's why it makes it so that if you have this across your organization, you could take campaign data, combine that with e-commerce transactions, combine that with a licensing a deal, combine that with when something is being scheduled to be released in the movie theaters. And you actually will have all of those data aspects across, because you can search and find them, and they'll be trusted aspects of the data, as opposed to just getting this blob and having a data scientist sit there for 6 months trying to figure it all out. So, good question.
All right, Dan, thank you very much for your time and your presentation. We appreciate it.